community violence, something that is causing a lot of problems in communities throughout the United States. And we here have a guest speaker, Michael T. Brown, who's a licensed professional counselor, and he's going to talk about his activity in a violence interrupter program and his experience as a counselor. So we'll welcome him to the show. You don't want to miss this episode because it's going to ensure that you have some strategies and resources to make sure that you can stop the violence or make sure that you mitigate it, prevent it before it even happens. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael T. Brown. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, TD. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Great. So we are so glad to have you. We always ask our guests, what is that thing that made them fall in love with learning?
Wow, great question. One of the things that really caused me to fall in love with learning was the environment. As you asked me that question, I'm thinking about a science teacher I had back in middle school who really helped create an environment where the learning was almost tangible. She was so passionate about her subject. It helped make you become passionate. And there's something about when you see someone excited or on fire about what they're doing, while you might not be super excited about the subject or the material that they're getting into, it can spark you. It can spark us to wanna learn and to want to grow. So I'd say a lot of it has to do with the environment that teachers help create. And there's something in us, I believe, that wants greater expansion, that wants to learn, that wants to grow. And whenever we create an environment conducive for so, children thrive, they grow, and it helps them tap into their potential and their purpose.
So as you caught this bug for learning, what really, how did that affect your education trajectory?
Yeah, I would say early on, the love for learning was helped me identify with wanting to see other people grow and flourish. And I think that's what really sparked me to enter into the helping professions. We spend so much time in schools. We spend so much time, in environments sometimes, particularly as children, right, where we're being taught, we're being instructed. And there was something about, I think, seeing leaders thrive in that environment that encouraged me and sparked me, maybe even on a bit of a subconscious level.
Mm-hmm.
I guess down deep, I started to identify, I want to be a part of something like that. I wanted to be a part of an environment where you see people bettering themselves.
Yeah.
And that sparked me to want to teach just as I had been taught and continue to learn.
Right. Okay. So what happened with your education, or what did you pursue as you went into college?
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I knew early on I like the idea of mental health and just seeing what make people tick. How do we improve? How do we grow? How do we thrive? How do we flourish? So got my bachelor's degree in psychology and then went and got a master's degree in education in guidance and counseling. And then right after that, went into working in the school system as a school counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked at all three levels. I started at middle school, went up to high school, and then elementary school. Yeah, some valuable experience. Valuable experience.
We have that in common. I have also taught at elementary, middle, and high school
Nice.
level. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay. So, one of the things that really stood out to me when I saw your profile was that you were part of this violence interrupter program in the city of DC.
Yeah, basically, it's a program that helps empower people in the community to stop violence in their community. So we work with people who may have had, some run-ins with the law themselves as they come out, maybe of incarceration or having, some legal problems. They work within the community to identify the people who are, oftentimes at the center of, problems or creating violence, help them pretty much help themselves and interrupt violence in their own communities.
Okay, sounds good.
That was a golden opportunity to help people in the community help keep their own community safe.
Mm.
And that experience taught me a lot about how we can reduce violence in our communities. And one of the greatest ways to do it is to identify where the problems exist, where the problems exist,
Right.
and get resources into those areas
Mm-hmm.
to build relationships. I remember early on this principle of no significant learning takes place without a significant relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Yes.
people would say maybe some people have heard it better this way: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
And when we invest into our communities, when we get resources into our community, when we get teaching and training and communication skills. So that's a big part of what the work we did there in DC was to get people's skills, right, in order to manage their emotions better, to help them with job training, to help them tap into their purpose. I think one of the greatest antidotes to fear, anxiety, depression, and violence is purpose. When we know
Okay.
why we're here, then we're more on track towards reaching that goal, which means we have less time to create problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you finding that there were like what were some common themes? Because you're saying they needed more resources in that area, or what were some issues that you found that you were able to help resolve or help people help
Yeah.
themselves?
Right. So we help train the people who work directly with them. So I didn't work necessarily directly with the folks in the
Okay.
community. Sometimes we would have some, you know, some interaction and some events. But one of the main needs was first having someone that believes in you,
Okay.
having a mentor, having someone who's walked down the same streets they walk down, and someone you could go to get you whatever it is you need. So the need might be specific to their circumstance. Do they need help finding a job?
Right.
Do they need help getting a driver's license or getting some identification? We certainly, right, wanted to address some of the interpersonal needs that are there or some of the emotional needs that were there. So we provided counseling and therapy services or getting them connected to the mental health resources that they're going to need. So it's really a program to help people focus in on addressing their tailor-made needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So you were training other people to be counselors or just training to mentor
We were
in that?
training the violence interrupters. So the violence interrupters are the people who are going to work with the people in the community
Mhm.
who, were at high risk for violence in their community.
So who would that be? Would that be a teacher? Would that just be someone who's that is the job, or they would have another role as well?
Well, the violence interrupters, a lot of them had run-ins with the law themselves.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So it gives more credibility, right?
Hmm.
That people who live in the community help serve their fellow mates in the community.
So can you tell us like, okay, so if I'm a violence interrupter, right? I maybe came out of the carceral system and then I am getting trained. Is it now my job? Like they're coming to a community center, like how do they
Yeah, great
reach the
question.
people?
They get a caseload. There's a program set up, with people who run the program on a daily basis. Part of our job was to teach some of the skills that they're going to be using. But they have, leadership that a whole robust program that identifies who's in the community that have the needs. They're selected. They have to apply, right? And you get vetted and check certain boxes
Okay.
in order to be prepared for it. Lots of training. We were one piece of that training that dealt
Okay.
more with communication skills, mental health needs. But it's a program that uh, that the city provides that has specific components to it to address
Okay.
all the logistical part of
I got it. Okay. All right. So that answered the question. That is their job and they
it.
are
That's right.
helping set them up. So that's really good. So really giving them a job and a purpose after they have been in the system.
That's
So
right.
that's really good. Something that's
Yeah,
really needed, I know for sure. And then filling in some gaps that are in the community at the same time. That is kind of a system that continues to feeds itself in a positive way. I
that's right.
see.
That's right. And it's a
So good.
national model. I believe California has one, and across the country,
Oh,
Chicago, a lot of
okay.
major cities, in different locations, obviously may tailor it differently. But
Hmm.
the idea, the concept of violence interruption is, I'd say, is pretty pretty widespread.
Yeah. So, it's new to me,
Hmm.
so it's good that we're hearing about it, and I'm sure it'll be new to different people in our audience as well.
Yeah.
What I also always talk about, or like to mention, is that there's a lot of resistance to counseling and stuff like that in the Black community for sure. How do you combat that or deal with that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think a lot of that's changing. I
Oh,
think a
that's
lot of
good.
that's changing generationally as well. I think younger people are, gravitating towards more. And but no, historically, systemically, there has been some resistance to, mental health. Or, you must be crazy, or it was like I tell people all the time, counseling. You don't go to counseling necessarily because you're quote unquote crazy. You go maybe to keep from going crazy,
Yes.
or not even so much about that, but more so it being about we all need mental health. For some folks, they may need to talk to a therapist, a counselor, a coach, a mentor, a pastor, a friend,
Yeah.
whatever it looks like. Right, we all can benefit from having somebody to talk to work through problems, and also maintenance. We
Hmm.
maintain our cars, we maintain our appliances. I think it makes sense we maintain our mental health.
That is so good that you said that. I also really like that you're saying like, we all need it and then mentioning all these different forms because I don't think we see it that way
Yeah.
all the time or people don't view it that way because if you have that counseling label or counselor label or therapist label, then it's viewed a certain way where of course they understand like I just need to talk to my best friend right now
Yeah.
and, because of the nature of some of our issues, sometimes those people can't be there for us or cannot relate to or whatever issue that we might have. So having someone else to talk to,
Yeah.
even for if it's a short amount of time or, it's important.
That's right. That's right. And I think COVID helped with that as well. From the standpoint, right, that COVID was the great equalizer in many ways. It revealed some things to us we that a lot of people might not have known when it comes to wow, this my mental health is really a big deal if I can't get to other people, if I can't congregate with other people, or I can't
Yes.
visit someone in the hospital, right? We all were in the same boat in many ways that, right, it was important to be in tune to how we were feeling, what we were thinking, and navigating that. So I think COVID did a lot for helping us realize that the importance of community, mental health, and loving and supporting each other through a difficult season.
The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go-to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today.
We have today Tiffany's tip on play based learning. Now, play based learning is distinct from, sitting down doing a worksheet, but it's objects, manipulatives that you're able to use and play with your child so that they are learning at the same time. So, thank you for joining us again, Tiffany. Tell us about play based learning.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, play-based learning is basically your child's natural way of learning. It's not following any rules or being put in front of a computer or a worksheet or a book. It involves exploration and experimentation and them doing trial and error and using their own creativity to learn.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give some practical examples of that, which would be kind of like dramatic play.
Okay.
So, I'm typically working with children from 1 to 5.
Okay.
So there's a lot of pretend play, making a pretend store, for example, like a flower shop. So having all of the flowers and vases, but you could get like, you know, the plastic ones from the Dollar Tree, and they could have their little apron and their cash register and go through the whole, aspect of having a flower shop, taking orders. And
Mm-hmm.
they're learning colors, they're learning numbers, they're adding, they're subtracting, they're doing all these kinds of things that we would have them do on a worksheet, but instead they're doing it through dramatic play. Um, so that is one example. And then another example is like outdoor nature play. So going for nature walks, going to parks, going to places where they're outside and they're maybe collecting leaves, maybe they're collecting rocks, or they're observing the various types of trees. They can work on all kinds of skills out in nature. They're observing animals, different types of birds and different types of clouds, and, all kinds of things that children can learn out in nature. I know for me, that was one of the funnest ways that I used to engage with my kids, out on nature walks, just learning so much together,
Mm-hmm.
observing different types of birds and just learning about, you know, the hawks and what region they live in and all those types of things. That could be, just another way of just using play and the freedom as the at the forefront of them having the learning, their learning experience.
I want to talk about how you can encourage parents with their children as they're getting older, if they're going through certain issues in counseling or mental health.
Great question. One principle that really stands out is connect before you correct.
Mm,
People tend to share when they feel safe to share. And
yeah.
parents can play a great role in creating a safe space for children to share how they're feeling, what they've been thinking about, what they've been working on, what they're working towards. I was talking with someone here recently about their child and a vision that they have to want to pursue a certain career, and the parents aren't quite on board with that. And as I was thinking about that situation, it really reminded me of the importance of no matter what our children decide they want to do, whether we think it's the right choice for them or not, the confidence and the belief in them
Mm-hmm.
will help fuel them towards whatever goal they seek.
Yes.
It translates well because career path, right, in many ways is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the name of your podcast, right? Falling for learning. It speaks to the whole idea of if we love to learn,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help drive us towards our goals. What we're learning matters, where we're going matters, but if we don't have the belief, if we don't have the drive, if we don't have the confidence towards our goals, it's going to be hard to reach them. And parents, in many ways, is the child's first teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And we get to think, well, what are we teaching them? How are we teaching them? And how are we making them feel along the way? I've heard the expression, you might not remember one thing your favorite teacher ever taught you as far as, you know, uh, the actual curriculum. And many of us would remember a lot of things. But even if we don't remember much about the subject material, we might not remember the Pythagorean theory, right? You might not remember the details of that. But you can certainly remember how that teacher made you feel,
Mm-hmm.
whether they made you feel welcome, whether you felt loved in the classroom. And parents get to play a tremendous role in that, in helping their children love to learn. And I say take that responsibility at home. Obviously, the teachers are our teachers, our educators have their job to do in the classroom. But parents, we have a job to do at home, right? To make sure, to try to ensure that the child feels comfortable in their learning and have a desire to learn.
Absolutely. We definitely talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah,
That's why we really, talk to both parents and educators on this show about what we can do, right,
yeah.
to make sure that our kids are getting that competitive advantage. Um, so when you're starting a relationship as a counselor with the student, what are some things that you do to help them feel comfortable or help them to connect with you?
Yes, really good question. One of the main things I do in therapy, whether it's, regardless to the age of the client, is to learn their story. So I do an assessment where I learn more about their background, their history, and that allows me to understand them, to create a safe environment. That way, when we get into addressing what the goals are,
Right.
before we get into principles and strategies, that they know they are heard, that there is a safe space to talk and share. And that takes time to build rapport and build, that type of client therapist relationship. But a lot of it just starts with, first of all, caring about their story, letting them know their story matters, but quickly
Yeah.
starting with the idea of goals. Where are we heading? I really embrace this principle of mental mapping. Where am I? Where do I want to go? And how am I going to get there? Now, obviously, in therapy, we have the time and the space to address root cause issues that may be blocking us from reaching our goals. That's a format, right, to navigate that. But in many ways, it starts with a map. I would imagine your idea for this podcast started with a mental map. And it starts oftentimes with an idea.
Yeah.
How can I use my gifts, my talents to push a message forward and let your voice be heard? And I think so many of our goals, right, starts with a map. We might not know how we're going to get there, but we need to know we're on a road to somewhere. We need to have goals out in front of us to do that. So helping children, particularly set goals, reminds them, hey, we're not just going through the motions here in school. I used to tell my elementary students, I remember going up to the board and drawing a ladder and said, every time you do well in school, every time you turn that paper in, every time you move from one grade to the next, you're taking one step closer towards your goal.
Right.
Yeah, so reminding them, we're not just messing around here. We're working towards something here. Yeah. And when they see an adult excited about their future, hopefully that sparks them to get excited as well.
Yeah, and I really resonate well, and I've talked about it before on my podcast, that I definitely, as a mother, have made the mistake of really frowning upon what my child want to do as a career choice, right? Because we have in our minds, and of course we have bias, of course, against certain professions, a bias toward other professions, obviously, and educators are really, really guilty of this, right? Um, but it is really about remembering that thing, and especially that falling for learning, because
Yeah.
we know of people on TV or wherever that are successful in different careers that maybe originally people might thought, okay, that's not going to work. That's not really the smart path. And, obviously, it's a lot of times there's very much less risk, right? You want to, if you want to become a teacher per se, it's not that much risk. Like, you just got to work at passing those certifications or going to college. It's not like, okay, are you going to make it? Like, if you keep going and doing those things, it's not going to be a problem. Where other professions, like, you, out of 50,000 other people, are you going to make it? You may not make it. You may do everything and still may not make that cut or whatever. But really just believing in the child and letting them take that journey, whatever it's their journey to take, right? It's really important.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean the parents aren't noticing and observing and understanding the child's skill sets and having those conversations, right?
Right.
All
Exactly.
that matters. But at the end of the day, and I tell people all the time, right, whose career is it going to be?
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's great that your mom wants you to do something, but you're going to have to be the one to get up and do it every day. And we spend too much
Absolutely.
time in our careers and our jobs, right? And too many people can relate to this idea of, and I don't know, somebody maybe even listening to me right now, and they're thinking, I really don't, maybe they don't like or they're not passionate about what it is that they're doing.
Right.
It's not too late to tap into what you find purposeful or that you're passionate about. Because for many people, right, it's a career path, it's a career journey. Not everybody knows what they want to be in kindergarten and choose that and stick with that. Some folks, a lot of teachers do, right? But at the end of the day, it's about building the confidence, the skills, and the capacity to help children find their purpose and their passion. And parents have a
Absolutely.
say in that. They do have a say in that. They can help shape and mold that. One little smirk, one little, why are you doing that, can have an impact. And so
Yeah.
can, I believe in you. Whatever you
Yeah.
choose, I'm here to help you. Let's get you on a path. that you're going to be excited about and that can be sustainable for you as a career.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we're thinking about giving kids a competitive advantage, what are some things that parents can do to really help their kids as they're maturing and going through different changes and having different tribulations? What are some things parents can do to help give their kids the advantage?
One thing I would say is to keep them actively engaged in things that they're interested in. Activities are great. Hobbies that interest them, that spark them, whether it's sports, clubs, activities. I used to have an expression, particularly working with youth, is, be too busy to get in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you got so much positive stuff going on, you really don't have time to fool around and get into trouble. Now we know, that we can still find a way,
Yes.
and we don't want to overly busy our children. Just like we don't need to be overly busy, but active engagement goes a long way.
Right.
And I would also add, keep the lines of communication open. Maybe it's just, out shooting hoops with your child, or on a drive to Walmart or wherever, to maybe just ask some open-ended questions that will maybe get your child talking. And that lines up with that principle, right, of connect before you correct.
Right.
Where particularly you think about children as maybe at middle school, right? They want to get close to their parents, but not be close. It's cool for you to be at the game, but I don't want you sitting beside me, right? It's like, like a lot of parents can relate to that, right? But in many ways, that's that pull of wanting to be close, but at the same time wanting to gain independence. So being mindful of that goes a long way. And lastly, I would say, don't get amnesia. Don't forget what it was like for you as a child and what our parents had to navigate. And, forget some of the trials and tribulations that we had. Sometimes we need to share some of those things with our children. No, mom or dad wasn't perfect, no matter how much they might act like it. Right. And sometimes they need to understand the struggle. It's okay to struggle, and you're going to get through it. We're going to help you navigate it. And I'm here for you in the struggle, to love them through it, and to be transparent at times, and to show for them to, maybe for the child to see the parent cracking a book every now and again, and to grow and to better ourselves, and to get help and to get therapy if we need it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Modeling those things that we want them to do.
Absolutely right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And where can the audience find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yes, they can go to my website, brownsleadership.com. Also over on X at mtbrown98. Same on LinkedIn. If they even Google my name, Michael T. Brown, LPC, I'm not hard to find online. So thanks for having me, and hey, keep up the good work.
Thanks. And for our audience out there, make sure you do something today that gives your child the competitive advantage. Thanks. Have a great week.
Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning, or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.